Loved former Vice President Joe has over the years done nothing but to undermine the black community while hugging and smiling for the cameras. Starting when he was first-time senator in 1974, Joe Biden resisted and fought with the courts to force desegregation. He wanted the whites and the blacks to go to separate schools. In 1975, he joined a bunch of racist Republicans to vote against school busing to enforce segregation in the schools. Court ordered desegregation. Black people and white people did not live in the same community, so buses were provided so they can take black kids to white neighborhood schools. And Joe Biden fought against that. Just 2 years later, in 1977, he said integrating black students will turn schools into a jungle, a racial jungle. Black people in the jungle. Okay? Just recently, while on a Breakfast Club show, Biden controversially stated those who got a problem figuring out whether they are for him or Trump aren't blacks.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to.
Despite apologizing for the statement after the backlash from the black community, he is yet to apologize for his past deeds that were targeting the black communities. Joe championed for the cutting, freezing, and raising the age for Social Security and other benefits that a lot of black people rely on. Biden even asserted that he would do more than that when asked if he doesn't care if his actions hurt the poor people. But these previously listed deeds are nothing compared to this one. This coming one is why we have so many black people in despair today. In 1994, Joe Biden was one of the writers and champion of the law known as the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. You're asking, what the heck is that? The Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994 was the largest crime bill in the history of the country. I called it police brutality law and also slavery by prison law. The bill provided funding for over 100,000 new police officers to target, discriminate, profile, and put black people in prison. And it also built thousands, allowed funding for thousands of prisons to house those people they criminalized. Okay? But I want to talk about three main components of this law that Joe Biden was all over everywhere supporting it up to today. First, the law authorized the death penalty for 16 new federal offenses. Those death penalties, 74% of defendants with death penalty recommendation from a federal prosecutors were people of black color. Racial disparities in capital punishment persist to this day thanks to this law, where blacks and Hispanics represent 53% of those receiving the capital punishment, while only being 31% of the USA populations. Second, this law imposed mandatory life sentences for individuals with 3 or more felony convictions.
My name's Howard Broadman. I was a judge in Tulare County for a little more than 13 years. I call myself a Barry Goldwater Republican. I'm tough on crime. I sentenced Shane Taylor 25 to life for a non-violent third offense. His first two offenses were not significant, and I made a mistake. And I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
This recorded call is from an inmate at a California correctional facility.
When I was a little kid, I was always bounced around from house to house, and then when we didn't have a house, I lived with friends, neighbors, wherever we could stay. 11 through 14, I started pretty much living on the street. A little bit after that, I started using methamphetamines. It was real rough growing up.
I was 16 years old, and that's when we started dating. My mom introduced me to him, and she told me he was a lovely guy. And so if I wanted to start talking to him, then it was okay.
When I met Shelly, we dated real quickly. She was just so super nice. She didn't do drugs. She was going to night school. It just seemed like we were going to be together forever.
I do love him and always will, but it was very hard.
When I was 18, I got into doing burglaries to get the drugs that I wanted. When I went to prison, the first time I learned my lesson, and I stayed home for a long time. When I found out Shelly was pregnant with Alicia, I was just overjoyed. That was the point in my life where I wanted to change.
Alicia brought out a lot of happiness in him. They always played toys together, you know. They would play ball. He's funny. He always made us laugh. He was a good father.
I was working as a prep cook and supporting my family. And then when I hit 27, they got me for $5 worth of drugs, and they gave me 25 years to life. I've never done anything violent in my whole life and never will.
I just remember the judge just saying, "You're getting 25 to life." It was a shock. Really, I don't understand how the system works.
The system doesn't think beyond the person who's getting prison time or jail time. They don't think about, the burden on the family. I was about 4 years old when my dad got 25 to life in prison. When I was little, when I would go see my dad, I couldn't wait for that day to come. I always look forward to it. We played checkers, cards, dominoes, every little thing. I mean, he taught me how to throw a football right in the yard.
I started her out with the Nerf football. She'd get up on the bench so she could be as tall as me. It's like I had a little Peyton Manning or something right over there.
Even though, I don't really get to spend a lot of time with him, when we are around, we do have a great bond. He tells me to stay in school. He tells me, I'm very proud of you, you take care of your mother.
Imposing a life sentence simply because an individual has a criminal record disproportionately targeted people of color, who are more likely to have a record in the first place because of police profiling, an unjust justice system. Having a criminal conviction record led people to be denied employment, especially people of color, and increased the likelihood of reoffending, therefore making it easier for people receiving life sentences because of the three-strike laws. The crime bill's three-strike provision sent thousands of Americans to prison for life based on the previous offenses for minor crimes such as stealing loose change of $1 from a parked car. In 2016, 78.5% of Americans serving life sentences in federal prisons were black people. Thanks to this law supported by Joe Biden. Decriminalize people, put them in prison for life. That was Joe Biden, not Donald Trump. That's the effect of George Floyd is because of this law. And third and final, this law allowed harsh penalties for kids, juveniles. The law created a pipeline from school to prison, increased racial disparities in juvenile justice involvement by creating a draconian penalties for so-called super predators. Low-income children of color, especially black children, who are convicted of multiple crimes. Among other things, the crime bill allowed prosecutor to charge 13-year-old children as an adult for some crimes. As a result, today, 2/3 of Americans who were sentenced to life in prison as a child, a juvenile, are black. Juveniles of color constitute a majority of cases that are transferred to adult criminal court, regardless of the offenses category. So now it's no longer about predatory criminals. It's just because you're black, you're referred to that court. The bill also increased funding for school resources officers. These school-based licensed police officers make arrests and are sometimes armed depending on their local jurisdiction. These increased the school-to-prison pipeline for black children, as the officers were twice as likely to discipline black students compared to white students.
Hands behind your back. Give me your hands. Give me your hands.
Some of you might argue this was decades ago. And just in 2016 interview with CNBC, Joe Biden said the law in large restored American cities.
Another thing about how perspectives change over time. Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, "I'm ashamed that I voted for the '94 crime bill." You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. And in fact, I drafted the bill, as you remember.
I know that.
And by the way,
though Joe Biden still supports the militarization of the police officers, still supports the profiling of police of black people, still supports the imprisonment of black people for minor crimes for life, still does not support a meaningful criminal justice reform. During the September 2019 Democratic debate, Joe Biden said that low-income families should put on a record players so their children can learn more vocabulary. This is called subtle racism. These American-born kids, just English speakers, he believes they know less. Recently, he made another statement in the New York Times interview, falsely claiming that black parents feel ashamed because they can't read and skip parent-teacher conferences. Statistically speaking, the number of teacher-parent conferences attendance for black and white are both 79%. There's no race in there. So the guy is subconsciously racist. And that subconscious racism just fuels right into his policies. So, as we head into the presidential elections, we should compare that the two presidential candidates for their records, not for their words. President Donald Trump may appear racist, but he has done more for black communities when it comes to policies and laws he supported. The black community should not fall for Joe Biden's act of friendship with a few black Americans as a show for solidarity with them in the fight for equality. His past proves that deep down, he's too racist, and he supports police brutality. He supports police brutality as he wrote the law on police brutality and is still proudly supporting it as of today. If we're going to be coerced into voting for Biden, we should make sure he is explicit in where he stands on issues that affect us, the black people of this nation. And we will vote for him knowing either he is with us or he is against us.